I was standing in our kitchen making breakfast when my husband David dropped the bomb that would change everything. He was scrolling through his phone, not even looking at me, when he said the words that still echo in my head. Sarah, I need someone who actually cares about her body. I froze with a spatula in my hand. The eggs were burning, but I couldn't move. For 8 years, I'd been married to this man. We'd built a life together in our suburban Chicago home, complete with the white picket fence and 2-car garage. But apparently, my size 18 body wasn't part of his vision anymore. "What are you saying, David?" I asked, even though I already knew. He finally looked up from his phone. "I'm saying I've met someone else. Jessica takes care of herself. She runs marathons, goes to the gym every day. When I look at her, I feel proud to be seen with her." The spatula slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. Jessica. I knew exactly who he was talking about. His new assistant at the law firm. 26 years old, blonde, and yes, very thin. I'd met her at the company Christmas party just 3 months ago. "So this is about my weight?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's about standards, Sarah. It's about wanting a partner who inspires you to be better, not someone who's given up on themselves." Given up on myself? I thought about all the years I'd supported his career, working 2 jobs while he went through law school. The dinners I'd cooked, the house I'd maintained, the sacrifices I'd made. But apparently, none of that mattered because I wore a size 18 instead of a size 6. "I want a divorce," he said, standing up and straightening his tie. "I'm moving in with Jessica this weekend. My lawyer will be in touch." And just like that, he walked out of our kitchen, out of our house, and out of our marriage. I stood there for what felt like hours, listening to his car pull out of the driveway, smelling the burnt eggs, and feeling something inside me break and rebuild at the same time. That night, I looked at myself in the full-length mirror in our bedroom. At 32, I was 210 pounds. I'd gained weight gradually over the years, especially after 2 miscarriages that David had insisted we not talk about with anyone. Food had become my comfort when nothing else could fill the empty spaces in my life. But as I stared at my reflection, I made a decision. Not because David wanted me to change, but because I wanted to prove something to myself. I wanted to show him and everyone else that I was capable of anything I set my mind to. This wasn't about getting him back. This was about getting myself back. I opened my laptop and started researching personal trainers, nutritionists, gyms. I wasn't going to do this halfway. I was going to transform my entire life, and when David saw me again, he was going to realize exactly what he'd thrown away. 3 weeks after David left, the divorce papers arrived. I signed them without reading the details, knowing his expensive lawyer had probably structured everything in his favor. But I didn't care about the money or the house anymore. I had bigger plans. I'd already started my transformation. I'd hired Marcus, a personal trainer who specialized in dramatic weight loss, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a nutritionist who'd helped dozens of people lose significant weight. The initial consultation had been brutal. They'd measured every inch of my body, calculated my body fat percentage, and laid out a plan that would require complete dedication for the next 8 months. "This isn't just about losing weight," Dr. Rodriguez had told me during our first meeting. "This is about completely changing your relationship with food, with exercise, and with yourself. Are you ready for that level of commitment?" I'd looked her straight in the eye and said, "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." The first month was hell. I was eating 1,200 calories a day, working out 6 days a week, and completely eliminating all the foods I'd used as emotional crutches. No more wine with dinner, no more ice cream during sad movies, no more fast food when I was too tired to cook. Marcus had me doing strength training 3 days a week and cardio the other 3 days. My entire body hurt constantly. But something incredible was happening. For the first time in years, I was sleeping through the night. My skin was clearer. I had more energy. And slowly, the number on the scale was going down. 5 pounds the first week, 3 the second, to the third. It was working. During this time, I'd also started therapy with Dr. Patricia Wells. She helped me understand that my marriage had been emotionally abusive in ways I hadn't even recognized. David's comments about my weight weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern of making me feel small and inadequate. "You're not just losing weight," Dr. Wells told me during one of our sessions. "You're shedding layers of self-doubt and shame that you've been carrying for years." She was right. As the pounds came off, I felt lighter in every way possible. I was rediscovering parts of myself that had been buried under years of criticism and self-neglect. I started reading again, something I'd loved in college but had abandoned. I began taking photography classes, exploring Chicago neighborhoods I'd never visited. I was becoming someone new, someone I actually liked. By the end of the second month, I'd lost 22 pounds. I was down to 188, and people were starting to notice. My coworkers at the marketing firm where I worked were asking about my secret. My sister Lisa, who lived in Portland, called and said I sounded different, happier. The divorce was proceeding slowly, which was perfect for my timeline. David's lawyer kept postponing meetings, probably thinking they could drag things out and force me to accept a worse settlement. They had no idea they were giving me exactly what I needed: time to complete my transformation. 4 months into my journey, something happened that changed everything. I was at the gym, finishing up a particularly intense session with Marcus, when I saw him. Thomas Richardson, David's former law school roommate and the one person whose success had always made David insanely jealous. Thomas had built a tech company from nothing and sold it for $40 million when he was 35. He was now 38, recently divorced himself, and, according to the Chicago Tribune's Most Eligible Bachelors article I'd seen last year, he was back in the dating scene. David had always harbored a deep resentment toward Thomas, claiming his success was just luck, while secretly wishing he had Thomas's life. I was on the treadmill when Thomas got on the machine next to me. At first, I didn't think he'd recognize me. I'd lost 35 pounds by then and looked completely different. But after a few minutes, he glanced over and did a double take. "Sarah? Sarah Morrison?" I slowed my pace and looked over at him. "It's Sarah again now, actually, and hi, Thomas." He stopped his treadmill completely and stared at me. "Wow, you look incredible. I mean, you always looked great, but now you're just glowing." We talked for 20 minutes after our workout. He told me about his divorce, how his ex-wife had cheated on him with his business partner. I shared the basics of my situation with David, though I didn't go into details about the cruel things he'd said. Thomas listened with genuine interest, something I hadn't experienced from a man in years. "I don't suppose you'd want to grab coffee sometime?" he asked as we were leaving the gym. I hesitated for exactly 2 seconds before saying yes. Our first coffee date turned into a 3-hour conversation. Thomas was nothing like the man David had always described. He wasn't arrogant or shallow. He was thoughtful, funny, and genuinely interested in my photography hobby and my marketing work. He asked about my weight loss journey not in a judgmental way, but because he was impressed by my dedication and results. 40 pounds in 4 months is incredible, he said. But more than that, you seem so confident and happy. That's the most attractive thing about you. Over the next 2 months, Thomas and I started seeing each other regularly. Not officially dating, but definitely more than friends. He was going through his own transformation after his divorce, seeing a therapist and rebuilding his life. We had long conversations about what we wanted in our next chapter. Meanwhile, I continued my weight loss journey. I was down to 175 pounds and dropped 4 dress sizes. I'd had to buy a completely new wardrobe, and for the first time in my adult life, I was shopping in regular sizes instead of plus sizes. The woman in the mirror looked like a completely different person from the one David had left 6 months earlier. 2 weeks before our scheduled divorce hearing, I got a call from David. It was the first time we'd spoken since the day he'd moved out 8 months earlier. Sarah, I was thinking maybe we should talk before the hearing, he said. His voice sounded different, less confident than I remembered. What about, David? Well, I've been hearing things. Lisa mentioned you've lost some weight, and I thought maybe we could grab lunch and discuss the settlement details in person. Lisa. My sister had run into David's brother at a coffee shop in Portland and had mentioned that I was doing really well after the divorce. She'd probably shown him one of the recent photos I'd sent her. I was down to 170 pounds now, just 2 pounds away from my goal weight. I'd lost 40 pounds and completely transformed my body and my life. I don't think that's necessary, David. Whatever you need to say, you can say through your lawyer. Come on, Sarah. We were married for 8 years. Don't you think we owe each other a conversation? I could hear something in his voice that I'd never heard before. Uncertainty. Maybe even regret. Through mutual friends, I'd heard that his relationship with Jessica wasn't going as smoothly as he expected. Apparently, dating a 26-year-old marathon runner came with its own set of challenges. Fine, I said, but just coffee. And it's not a reconciliation meeting, David. It's 2 people finalizing the end of their marriage. We met at a Starbucks downtown, neutral territory. I arrived first and chose a table by the window. I was wearing a fitted black dress that showed off my new figure, and I felt more confident than I had in years. When David walked in, I watched his face go through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something that looked like shock. He barely resembled the confident man who'd left me 8 months earlier. He looked tired, stressed, and he'd gained weight. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jesus, Sarah, you look... He started, then seemed to lose his words. Different, I finished for him. That's what happens when you commit to changing your life. We ordered our drinks and sat down. David kept staring at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Why did you do this? Do what? Get healthy? Take care of myself? I thought that's what you wanted. He said, I mean, why didn't you do this while we were married? If you'd looked like this a year ago, we might not be sitting here. The audacity of that statement took my breath away. But instead of getting angry, I felt something else. Pity. This man had thrown away 8 years of marriage for someone who looked good in yoga pants, and now he was realizing what he'd actually lost. David, I didn't lose this weight to save our marriage. I lost it to save myself. You did me a favor when you left. You showed me that I'd been settling for someone who only valued me for my appearance. His face flushed red. That's not... I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You said I'd given up on myself. You said you needed someone who cared about her body. Well, mission accomplished. I care about my body now, and I'm not sharing it with someone who only loves me conditionally. That's when I told him about Thomas. Not to hurt him, but because I wanted him to understand that I'd moved on completely. I watched his face change from confusion to anger to something that looked like desperation. Thomas Richardson? You're dating Thomas Richardson? We're seeing each other, yes. And David, he's never once criticized my body or made me feel like I wasn't enough. That's what a real partner does. The meeting ended with David practically begging me to reconsider the divorce. He suggested couples counseling, a second chance, a fresh start. But I was done. I'd spent 8 months becoming the woman I was meant to be, and she was too smart to go backward. The divorce hearing was scheduled for Friday morning in downtown Chicago. I'd planned everything carefully, including my outfit and my arrival time. Thomas had offered to come with me for moral support, and I'd said yes. Not because I needed him there, but because I wanted David to see that I'd truly moved on with someone who valued me completely. The week before the hearing, I reached my goal weight, 168 pounds. I'd lost exactly 42 pounds in 8 months. But more importantly, I'd gained a life I actually wanted to live. My body was strong and healthy, my mind was clear, and my future looked brighter than it had in years. I'd also made some professional changes that I was excited to share during the hearing. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been offered a senior marketing position at a company in San Francisco. The salary was nearly double what I was making in Chicago, and it came with equity options that could be worth significant money if the company went public. I'd accepted the position and would be moving to California right after the divorce was finalized. Thomas had been incredibly supportive of my decision. He had business interests on the West Coast and was considering opening an office in Silicon Valley. "Maybe this is the universe telling us we should explore California together," he'd said. We weren't making any concrete plans yet, but the possibility of building a new life together on the other side of the country was exciting. The night before the hearing, I tried on the outfit I'd chosen, a tailored navy blue suit that fit perfectly, emphasizing my new figure without being too revealing. I looked professional, confident, and completely transformed from the woman David had left. I practiced my answers to potential questions from his lawyer, though I wasn't expecting any surprises. This was a no-fault divorce state, and we'd already agreed on most of the terms through our lawyers. What David didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything throughout our marriage and separation. His cruel comments, his financial decisions, his affair with Jessica. My lawyer had advised me that while Illinois was a no-fault divorce state, evidence of adultery could still influence the settlement, especially regarding spousal support. I'd also discovered something interesting about David's finances. Through some careful investigation, my lawyer had found that David had been hiding assets, moving money into accounts that he thought I didn't know about. He'd underestimated me in every possible way, including my intelligence and my resources. The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 6 a.m. and went for a run along Lake Michigan. It was a beautiful October morning, crisp and clear, with the Chicago skyline reflecting perfectly in the water. As I ran, I thought about how different my life was from a year ago. I was stronger, happier, and more confident than I'd ever been. Whatever happened in that courthouse, I was ready for it. Thomas picked me up at 8:30, and we drove downtown together. He looked handsome in his charcoal gray suit, and I could see other women checking him out when we walked into the courthouse. But his attention was completely focused on me. "You ready for this?" he asked as we approached the courtroom. "I've been ready for months," I said. "Today is just the paperwork." David was already in the courtroom when we arrived, sitting with his lawyer at the plaintiff's table. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his papers and checking his phone constantly. Jessica was nowhere to be seen, which didn't surprise me. According to mutual friends, their relationship had been rocky lately. When David saw Thomas walk in with me, his face went completely pale. But that was nothing compared to his reaction when he actually got a good look at me in the courtroom lighting. I watched him do a double take, then whisper something urgently to his lawyer. The lawyer glanced over at me, and I saw his eyebrows raise in surprise. The proceedings began with standard formalities. Judge Martinez reviewed the case details and asked if both parties were ready to proceed. David's lawyer immediately requested a brief recess to discuss some new developments with his client. During the recess, I heard David's lawyer talking to him in hushed tones near the back of the courtroom. I couldn't make out all the words, but I caught phrases like significant change in circumstances and reconsider the settlement terms. Thomas squeezed my hand and whispered, "He's panicking." When court resumed, David's lawyer stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, my client would like to request a continuance to explore the possibility of reconciliation." My lawyer immediately objected. "Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison has made it clear that she wishes to proceed with a divorce. She's already accepted a new job in California and plans to relocate immediately following these proceedings." Judge Martinez looked at David. "Mr. Morrison, is this request based on any new information or circumstances?" David stood up, looking directly at me. "Your Honor, my wife has undergone a significant transformation since we separated. I believe we could work through our differences if given more time." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was actually trying to delay the divorce because I'd lost weight. It was exactly the kind of shallow, manipulative behavior that had driven me to leave in the first place. My lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client's physical appearance has no bearing on the validity of this divorce. Mr. Morrison was the one who initiated the separation and filed for divorce. He moved in with another woman immediately after leaving the marital home. Mrs. Morrison has moved on with her life. That's when things got interesting. My lawyer presented evidence of David's affair, his hidden assets, and his attempts to manipulate the settlement in his favor. She also presented documentation of his cruel comments about my weight and appearance, including text messages he'd sent to friends mocking me. The judge reviewed everything carefully. Mr. Morrison, it appears you were quite eager to end this marriage 8 months ago. What's changed? David's lawyer whispered something to him, but David ignored the advice and spoke directly to the judge. Your Honor, I made a mistake. I can see now that my wife is an amazing woman, and I want another chance. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Morrison, do you wish to reconcile with your husband? I stood up, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. No, Your Honor, I don't want to reconcile with someone who only values me when I meet his physical standards. I've spent the last 8 months building a life I'm proud of, and I'm not going backward. The judge granted the divorce immediately. But the settlement was even better than I'd hoped. Because of David's adultery and hidden assets, I was awarded a larger share of our joint property and ongoing spousal support. His attempt to hide money had backfired spectacularly. As we left the courthouse, David tried one last time to talk to me. He followed us outside, calling my name. When I turned around, he looked desperate. Sarah, please, I know I made mistakes, but we could start over. You look incredible. We could be happy together. I looked at this man who had once made me feel so small and inadequate. Now he seemed like the small one, begging for a chance with the woman he'd discarded. David, I'm not the same person you left, and you're not the man I want to be with. I hope you figure out what actually matters in a relationship, but it won't be with me. Thomas and I walked away together, leaving David standing alone on the courthouse steps. As we drove toward my favorite restaurant to celebrate, I felt lighter than I had in years, not just because of the weight I'd lost, but because of everything I'd gained. 6 months later, I was thriving in San Francisco. Thomas had opened his West Coast office and we were building something real together. My photography was featured in a gallery show and I'd been promoted again at work. I was happy, healthy, and surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I looked like. David had tried to contact me several times through mutual friends, but I had made it clear I wasn't interested. I heard through the grapevine that his relationship with Jessica had ended badly, and he was now dating apps looking for his next Sarah. But there would never be another Sarah like me. I transformed myself completely, not for him or anyone else, but for me. And that version of myself was never going to settle for less than she deserved, ever again. The woman who walked into that courthouse had lost 42 pounds, but more importantly, she'd found herself, and she was never going back.